Hello, viewers, friends, gamers, pieces of cheese. Welcome back to another episode of Catching Zeez podcast. I still don't know if that's going to be the official name, but we're here with yet another episode. I'm super excited to bring this back, and I have, once again, a very special guest joining me. This is one of my very close friends. Her name is Emmy, and she is very cool. Why don't you introduce yourself, Emmy?
Yeah, I'm Emmy. I've known Zeez for a while now, I think since high school. We used to do various clubs in high school, and I'm just a close friend of his. I'm a graduate student now. I'm studying electrical engineering, and so I do interesting stuff, and I really love robotics and programming, but I'm also just kind of a nerd. So and I think Zeez has mentioned me like casually sometimes, so that's always fun.
A few times, yeah. And for those who are just now seeing her for the first time, she is probably the smartest person I know. So every time we get into like deep conversations, similarly to the little rookie from the last episode, where the little rookie feels so like a wise monk, I would describe you as like the wisest, smartest professor, I guess. I don't
see.
know.
Yeah, that makes sense. That is kind of what I'm trying to do. So I'm glad I'm getting there.
You have like so many stats all in your intelligence.
Yeah, but none in my perception. It actually on my Discord about me, it says may have traded all their points in wisdom for phenomenal cosmic powers. Can't really tell. The joke is that the wisdom stat, for those of you that don't play D&D, wisdom is your perception stat. So I've like traded all my points in wisdom away for phenomenal cosmic powers, but I have none of the perception to be able to tell if I actually have them or not.
Wow. What a double-edged sword.
It is a double-edged sword.
Anyways, I wanted to kind of talk about Tears of the Kingdom. For those who don't know, Tears of the Kingdom is the latest Zelda game in the franchise, and we will not be really discussing any spoilers, but back in our high school days, we talked about Breath of the Wild a whole lot, I know, because we both played it around the same time. We were both playing through the game together, and from a game design sort of perspective, which we have both dabbled in a little bit, we even worked on a game together that never happened, but we really like looking into game design things and talking about it together. So I wanted to know some of your thoughts about like Tears of the Kingdom and the differences between Breath of the Wild. Once again, no spoilers for the plot, but we're mainly looking at like the game design type of things and the gameplay.
Of course, Zeez, I'll never mention that everyone dies at the end. That's an obvious spoiler.
No, I haven't finished it.
It's okay. I think you have more hours in than I have. That's not a spoiler, by the way. I was just joking for anyone, just to be totally clear.
I think I've sunk around... With grinding, I think I've sunk around 80 hours in. Without grinding, I think it's around 50, just for my Let's Play recordings.
I probably feel like I'm at 40 hours. I'm not really sure. I haven't been keeping track. That might be an overestimate, though. I spent way too long on a singular shrine. That one shrine took, like, at least a couple hours of my gameplay. So, and there
are some tricky ones.
I like totally overthought it. In terms of the game design, I guess we can start a bit about comparing it to Breath of the Wild, right? So there's like some obvious differences. There's the caves. There's the underground. There's actually like the map is really 3 times as big as it used to be, right? With the because there's 3 different layers for you to explore now. I'm not sure how much of a spoiler that is.
Yeah, no, I think people know that there is the depths. I think that's probably like the biggest quote-unquote spoiler we would discuss. I think most people know that exists by now. Even Nintendo advertised it, so I think it's safe to discuss. But I would say the sky seems very limited in comparison to the land and the depths. I think for me, the depths is really interesting, just to like touch on just a little bit, because it's basically like one huge just dungeon that you can do at any time, because there is no shrines, and for the most part, there isn't really any things that are keeping you locked out of place or anything. It just feels like you can explore and go in any direction you want, which is true in the overworld, but there's a lot more I don't know, obstacles, side quests, other things to do in the overworld. Whereas underground, it just feels like this, you just go. It's like all exploration, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I think the sky in a lot of ways feels like a spiritual successor to Skyward Sword. Like the Sky
Right.
Islands in Skyward Sword, it kind of feels like that. I haven't played Skyward Sword myself, so I can't say for sure. Maybe I'll play someday. Like, yeah, I do agree with you that the sky is somewhat limited. But I also haven't explored that much of it. And yet the entire map is pretty expansive. It's sometimes I do get just this like decision paralysis where I'm just like, oh, what do? I don't know. There's so many things.
That's so true. That's actually the thing I've been looking for. I've noticed that when I was playing, I've been so indecisive on what to record next. Like, I'll finish an episode and then I'll be like, oh gosh, what do I do next? I could go here, I could go here, I could go here. And then I realized just a few episodes ago, I was like, I haven't done the main story for 10 episodes because I've just been so busy exploring and doing side quests. It's crazy. But yeah, decision paralysis and indecisiveness is like huge when playing this game.
Yeah, I think like actually speaking of the main story, that's a good thing to talk about. This game is a lot more linear than Breath of the Wild, wouldn't you agree?
From what I've seen, yes. Like, it follows a similar format where you do have to go to like all 4 regions, and there are things that you have to do there. But it seems that to my knowledge, again, I don't know too much. I don't know if you can just go challenge Ganon right from the start. I don't know if that's a thing, because honestly...
Who's Ganon? What are you talking about? I don't even know who the final boss is at this point. No, because I bring this up because in the beginning, I just wanted to go and start lighting up towers because my map was empty. I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna go to towers. I saw a tower and I'm just like, okay, tower time, let's go. And I rode off, I found a horse. I couldn't find a stable to even register the horse. It was just a horse that I found. And I was like actually concerned it would like despawn or something. And I just rode off to the tower and I found out that I couldn't even activate the tower. I'm like, what? This seems so much unlike Breath of the Wild. We're like, in Breath of the Wild, you could just go, like, almost immediately you could start activating towers, where I actually had to, like, talk to someone.
Yeah, you have to go to Lookout Landing.
Yeah, I had to talk to someone, and then, like, the camera you don't get right away either. You have to talk to someone, and it seems like there's all these, like, narrative gateways in Tears of the Kingdom, unlike in Breath of the Wild.
There's a little bit. I think Lookout Landing is technically part of the tutorial because you get the paraglider there and you get the quest where you can get the camera, which you didn't get the camera right away in Breath of the Wild. You had to go to Hateno Lab, but literally in Breath of the Wild you did Great Plateau, then the game guided you toward Kakariko Village, and then it guided you toward Hateno Village. So if you followed the guides of Breath of the Wild, you would make your way to the camera pretty early on. And I guess similar to Tears of the Kingdom, it's like that. But I thought it was very interesting to not give us the paraglider right away. Like, you have to go to Lookout Landing, or else if you try to explore, you're going to be out of luck if you fall off a cliff.
I was trying to explore without the paraglider. I'm like, what, so when am I getting the paraglider? I feel like they're just supposed to give it to me. I was like, man, this game is so hard. There's no paraglider. And then I went to Lookout Landing. Maybe I wasn't supposed to do that. I don't know. Maybe I was just too eager to explore and see Hyrule. Like, I think maybe, like, I'm not sure how it would have been if I went into it with fresh eyes, but I was so eager to, like, see how Hyrule had changed that I just forgot about Lookout Landing. I was just like, okay, you guys can just go. I think you said to go look at some stuff, and then I just went off into the distance and I saw a tower. And then I didn't even get my paraglider.
No, that's true. That's fair. It took me. I went to Lookout Landing pretty soon because I wanted to try and keep, the Let's Play going at a consistent rate. But I can tell you, if I was recording not on screen, I would have 100% done the same thing. I would have gone straight to the Farron region and tried to just farm up on hardy durians or whatever, which I've been told aren't even in the game anymore. I
don't think hardy things are in the game.
There's hardy truffles, but they're really rare. Yeah, so I think they're keeping, like, you know how you would spam, like, bonus hearts? I think they're keeping that a lot more rare to try and make the game a little more difficult.
Well, I think like the best thing about the hearty truffles in the original game wasn't the bonus hearts. They were broken because even if you cooked one of them, you would get full recovery plus bonus hearts.
Right.
So they like you really didn't really need to think about cooking food if you just found hearty stuff. You just cook one of them and you get a full recovery item, and that's like really you're really getting the most value that way. And I felt like they saw that was kind of broken and they removed that. And actually, I'm kind of glad that they removed that because that was really broken.
Yeah, me too. It was definitely broken. Even just the fact that you can pause and just eat at any time is still kind of broken. But there are lots of enemies that can just do like insane damage. And like early on, you don't really have that many good ways of dealing heavy damage to enemies.
Yeah, there aren't a lot of good ways, especially when you're still limited on stamina. Your spin attacks are even limited and whatnot. And there's just a lot of new enemies that you are adapting to. Even in the early game. So I kind of like that. I kind of like how the early game has... I think a lot of people pointed out how, like, in Breath of the Wild, Eventide Island and the Master Sword Trials were really interesting because you didn't have a lot of those weapons. And I think that's...
I love those too.
Yeah, me too. I think I love them... I love them a lot too. And I think it's possible that they are extending the early game more instead of just trying to push you through the early game because they recognize that there's that sort of challenge is fun in a way, if that makes sense.
Of course, you have to use those limited resources without a doubt.
And it's also more tactical. You have to think a bit more about how you're going to approach the enemy encampments and how to use the resources that are lying around, like the various explosive barrels and whatnot.
Yeah, I think that's one thing in Breath of the Wild that just wasn't really... I don't know, it felt like prominent in the early game, but after you started getting like some good weapons, it just kind of felt pointless to like sneak around. It kind of felt pointless to use the barrels or use any of the physics to beat up enemies when you could just shoot them with an arrow or flurry rush them constantly while holding a shield. Like it felt like it wasn't necessary. But in this game, especially in the early game, relying on more tactical approaches feels a lot more, I guess, usable, or it feels more important in this game, which I really enjoyed. So it wasn't just like, a Y mashing mini game or whatever.
Well, yeah, I think like tactics feels like a more central part of the game. They want you to plan more in this game, and I like that. I like how the battles have become more interesting in that way.
For sure. And I think I know you are going to be like obsessed with some of the shrines that I have seen, but I know that you are pretty interested in physics. We'll probably talk a little bit about physics later, but physics in Tears of the Kingdom are just absolutely insane. The reason for the delay, at least just one of them to my knowledge, was they wanted to make sure that the physics engine in the game was like perfect. So they delayed the game, worked, and made sure the physics are like exactly what they wanted them to be. And they are just... From my perspective, as somebody who has mainly worked alongside you when you were working on physics engines, or just seen it from a more, I don't know, slightly above casual perspective, I think it's so fascinating seeing how the physics in the games work. I'm curious to see or hear what you think.
I think like a lot of the differences between the physics between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, right? They're the same physics engine, like at the core. Like it's still the same.
The fundamentals
are fundamentally the same. But there's a lot of extra stuff and polish on the Tears of the Kingdom one, where I think like it feels like they really ironed it out. Like they looked at all like the rough edges in the Breath of the Wild physics engine and all the places where it was underutilized and said yes to all of that. And they made like, it also feels a lot more optimized than before. The game has quite a bit of improved performance. I think a lot of people, I talk about performance a lot in terms of physics engines. I think you remember in high school where I was like trying to simulate sand. Yes,
and it became super laggy. That's right. I do recall that.
It was
simulating
so many
small particles at once was just
like so
too
excited,
much.
But our teacher was like so unimpressed about that. I still remember.
Oh gosh.
But the optimization's really like a large part of the physics engine. Is you can have some pretty impressive physics, but like a large part of it is having those physics occur in a timely manner, right? And that kind of performance people sometimes talk about as this thing like, oh yeah, I get better frame rate, but also it's like a part of immersion and whatnot, and it's a part of the programming that I feel like it's glossed over a lot because there's a lot of work that gets put into it, and I'm impressed with how much they were able to like, if you really think about it, Breath of the Wild has just so much more performance, or not Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom has so much more performance than Breath of the Wild, and it's running on pretty much the same hardware, and at its core is the same physics engine. So I'm really impressed by what they were able to do, pushing, like, there's so much more stuff in this physics engine, and yet it, like, runs faster, and so that's really interesting to me. In terms of, like, other physics engine things, like they really ironed out a lot of those, like, edge cases where, like, I think we've all seen some of those, like, insane, like, devices people have attempted to create in Breath of the Wild, like the flying machines and stuff. I don't even know.
Yeah, the minecarts where you use magnesis on the bottom one and stack a minecart on top and you'd fly like that. Now in Tears of the Kingdom, that's just a common occurrence.
Yeah, I mean, so, like, like, sticking objects together, that's a pretty, I mean, that seems like such a basic thing in terms of physics engine, but in terms of, like, a gameplay perspective, like I don't really think that, like, there's gonna be a lot of edge cases to handle with sticking things together. Like, obviously there's, like now you have two objects that are, like, kind of really one object, and you're trying to figure out, like, okay, how is it gonna hit all these other things in these new ways that we didn't expect? And so that's gonna take a lot of time to iron out bugs and whatnot. That's gonna be annoying. But in terms of, like, a programming perspective, I feel like it isn't super complicated, in my opinion. I'm not really sure under the hood, maybe it is a lot more complicated than I think, but, like, it seems like such a basic way of adding, like, a lot of complexity to the game when you have, like, all these components. It's just like, this is, like, kind of like adult Legos, kind of. It kind of feels like that sometimes. Like, Nintendo got a lot of inspiration from that, and that's kind of really interesting.
For sure. I think what's really cool is, like, all the tools that you have, mainly the Ultra Hand, for, like, physics-based things, of course. It's so simple for the player to understand, and, like, I think most players, I guess casual players, maybe even, like, children who don't really think too hard about physics, like, when you play a game that has, like, bad physics, you'll look at it and be like, haha, that's funny. But, like, when you play a game with, like, godlike physics, like Tears of the Kingdom, you sometimes just feel like it's like, yeah, this is how things should be, and you don't even really think about it too hard. There are sometimes I know when I was playing Tears of the Kingdom, there is this specific shrine that I was doing, and I was like, I didn't comment on it too hard, but I want to just be like, yo, the physics. I just wanted to, like, gush about the physics. I thought it was so cool. I don't want to, like, spoil it for anybody, but man, it was so freaking cool. And, like, that's the thing, is it feels so natural when you're looking at it. It's like, yeah, that's how something should move. But to get something to that point in programming, to making something look so complex yet so simple for, like, the player to understand, it's crazy. I don't know if I'm explaining this in the best way, but, like, when you play Tears of the Kingdom, and you're just, like, you're going around the world, and these things are happening with the physics, or with physics-related things, you're just like, yeah, that's how things should be. Like, that's what it would look like in the normal world. That's how it is here. And it's like, wow, they really made that. They really made this game super Zelda maker.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, like, there is, like, an interesting part of the physics that I will point to that is kind of, like, actually, like, I think we've been talking a lot about how realistic the physics are, but actually there's a lot of places where the physics aren't realistic, and that's kind of one of its strong suits, in my opinion.
Right. I wanted to go into that too.
I will mention, this is the thing that I think about the most. This is just because I know how physics works. When you, like, attach wheels to a cart using Ultra Hand, the Ultra Hand ability, I don't think actually that would work in real life if you were able to sticky a wheel onto an axle. That wouldn't work, but
no, of course.
They made it work anyways because of our intuition over, like, oh, we can stick a wheel onto a cart and wheels roll. And so I think, like, it strikes a good balance between, like, I think this was a problem that I ran into when I was designing games with you in our physics engine. Like, you can make the physics hyper-realistic, but, like, that's just not fun sometimes, and it can be really annoying. Like you can be like, why doesn't this wheel move? And it's like, because the physics is realistic. And so sometimes less realistic physics is more intuitive, and that a lot of that just comes down to testing and intuition and whatnot, and so you can kind of see like where a lot of the work went into like play testing it and the programmers playing around with it and whatnot. Like sometimes it's hard to get a feel for how something will work unless you've like you get a stronger feel once you've designed a lot of this stuff, or like once you've used it. And so sometimes you just have to design it and see how it works and how it feels.
Right. I would think a lot of it is also just giving, it's like that exaggerated sort of physics where it's giving the player leeway. Like, it doesn't expect the player to know exactly how to build, a cart from scratch. It doesn't expect every player to be like an engineering professional, but like it uses like the fundamentals of like reality physics, I guess. And it's just like, okay, well, like you said, if wheels move and you stick them on a cart, it's gonna move. And like that works. And it's like, it's realistic if it were to be like wheels on a cart, but built properly. It's just, it's neat. It's so neat, dude. I love Tears of the Kingdom.
I just hear you gushing about it at this point. Actually, like another thing about the physics engine is how seamlessly it like kind of blends in. Like it almost feels like you're not really playing a game sometimes. I think I remember like you the other day, and we were playing Minecraft together just casually, and you were trying to ascend in Minecraft. That was like the funniest thing. It
happened. That's not the only time. I was taking a walk because I go on walks all the time around the place that I live, and there are these like little construction things just lying out, and I was like, oh gosh, my first thought was to use Ultra Hand. It's happening in real life too, dude. I need to go outside more. I need to put some grass.
I can't wait for those videos to come out where it's like Zelda in real life, where you see like someone uses Ultra Hand in real life, like if real life was like Zelda. I can't wait for those videos.
No, I'm telling you right now, if I ascended right now, I would just go into my neighbor's apartment. Oh gosh.
Well, actually, it's interesting how Ultra Hand works. Let's talk. If you want to talk a bit about Ultra Hand, it's kind of interesting because when Breath of the Wild first released and I first saw Magnesis, I didn't actually think it was Magnesis. I actually thought it was an ability more like Ultra Hand, and I'm like, wow, how is this game even going to be balanced? You can just move everything around, and I didn't even think like you could make a game where you could just like move everything around, and it would like, wouldn't that just break every puzzle? And it turns out, no. It doesn't, and that's really surprising to me, at least in Tears of the Kingdom. Like, at first it feels like Ultra Hand is like so cool and powerful, and then you start to use it, and then you're like, oh, it's just an ordinary ability in a way of interacting with the world.
Right, and it's perfect for puzzles and inventing and innovation. It's so good, and I think like it's the same with Ascend, where like when we first saw Ascend, it's like, oh, that's broken. We can just climb up every mountain for free, but like, unless it has a cave or a point that where you can specifically get under and there needs to be like a flat surface, it's really not as busted as you thought it would be. It's just good for puzzles, and it's really good for when there's the opportunity to use it, but otherwise it's not like as broken as everybody thought it would be.
Yeah, and I think a large part of that comes down to those limitations. Like when you start putting like asterisks on these abilities, like you can ascend but only at these points, that starts putting like in the design of how like you can restrict the player and how you can kind of guide the player into doing different things, because I think the asterisk, the restrictions on these abilities are part of like are kind of like traversal challenges. They're like larger versions of, oh, I don't have enough stamina, how am I going to reach up there? There are just more limitations on how Link can move in different ways. They're just different ways Link can move and get around to different places.
It's so cool. I can definitely see why some people look at Breath of the Wild and they're like, I don't want to play that anymore. I have to play Tears of the Kingdom now. It's just like, oh man, it's crazy. Like I've actually heard people say that Breath of the Wild just feels like a beta version of Tears of the Kingdom. And I think like in some ways I would agree. Maybe not entirely, but I could definitely see where they're coming from for sure.
I think I was the one that said that. Like when one of our friends asked how Tears of the Kingdom was, I was just like, oh yeah, it makes Breath of the Wild look like a beta version of Tears of the Kingdom.
It does, honestly. Like there are some things that Breath of the Wild does have like differences and whatnot. Like it has like the different runes, but like the only thing that's really missing from your kit is stasis. That's it. You have recall, which is similar, but you can't use on enemies. Bombs are replaced by bomb flowers, and magnesis is just upgraded into Ultra Hand. So really, the only thing that's missing is Stasis from the original game, and that's about it.
I mean, I feel like Recall is a version of Stasis. You can just continually spam Recall, and that's kind of like Stasis. You can't really hit things and store up energy like Stasis, though. I'm wondering if they got rid of Stasis, probably because there were so many, like, glitches associated and, like, broken things associated with it.
There was lots of speedrun tactics that definitely used Stasis for sure, and I think it was kind of broken sometimes when you used it on enemies, like fighting Lionels and whatnot. It was pretty useful, that's for sure. It was even broken in Age of Calamity, too.
Well, I think it was too useful. I think that's probably the reason they got rid of it. It felt like a very no-effort way to get a lot of things done. And, like when you have a tool that's too useful in a game, that's not very fun either, because then you're just, like, there's no challenge to it. Yeah.
Right, that's what I mentioned like earlier when Breath of the Wild, like, why would you use all these tools when I could just spam Stasis?
I mean, I feel like Stasis is like the main primary thing a lot of speedrunners use. Like, if you took away Stasis, I feel like the speedrunners would just lose so much time. They'd be like, no, we don't, no Stasis.
Yeah, there are obviously many other speedrunning tactics, but Stasis was, I think, definitely in like early game Breath of the Wild, it was like the most useful one for sure. Now they have like the bomb stacking where you use like a bomb, pull out another bomb, blow yourself up, and it like launches the bomb into you and you go flying. And then there's the one where you have like the bomb wiggling thing. I've looked up a few speedrunning tactics, but I think definitely early on Stasis was one of the most useful ones for sure.
Yeah, I think the bomb tactic is probably more prominent nowadays. I almost forgot about that one. My sister was like trying to... I was playing with my sister and she was like... I don't know why she just tries to replicate all these speedrunner tactics in Breath of the Wild. I remember her trying that out with her. I am kind of sad they got rid of whistle running, but it needed to be done, unfortunately.
No, that's true. That was one of the first things I tested. I was like, is whistle running still? I was like, nah, it's not. Literally everybody used whistle running, dude. Oh my gosh.
Let's talk a bit about, since you brought up like bomb flowers, do you want to talk a bit about the crafting in Breath of the Wild?
Oh, true. Oh yeah, one last thing I wanted to mention. I forgot about Cryonis being a rune. That's basically just honestly gone, but you can just kind of use ice flowers. If you throw ice flowers in the water, it makes an ice platform. So boom, there's your Cryonis. It's just like, they're just regular items that just, some runes were demoted to regular items and some runes were upgraded into things like Ultra Hand. But yeah, the crafting is really, really fun. How they did away with like fire arrows, ice arrows, shock arrows, whatnot, and you just use like regular items that you find scattered around the world. And I think that makes it a lot better to give you more of an incentive to go out and collect these items, because you can use them in combat really, really well. And I love that there's not just, you know, spamming bomb arrows. Like, bomb arrows are still obviously broken, but now you have things like puff shrooms, which, you know, give you the ability to sneak strike, which I think puff shrooms are actually insanely broken. You have like muddle buds that will confuse enemies to make them attack each other, and all sorts of other little things. Something that I really love is I was doing this shrine in the Elden region that had lava in it, and I was like, oh man, how am I supposed to cross this? I could like use recall and maybe make a platform come to me, and then I realized, oh wait, there are these like little water fruits that I could use, and I threw a water fruit down and boom, it became a platform in the lava. I was like, oh, that's so cool. And then I realized I barely had any of them, and I was like, wait, choo-choo jellies are also water. So if you threw a choo-choo jelly in the lava, it creates a platform. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. That's literally so cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think that comes down to Breath of the Wild's chemistry system at work. I think I've heard a few of the people call it the chemistry system of Breath of the Wild. I think they expanded upon that. I think I've heard some people talk about how the crafting system relates to weapon breakage. How do you think the crafting system relates to like the weapon breakage? I think myself, like, I have become a bit less attached to weapons now because I know how to craft them. I guess the materials are still somewhat more rare, but like being able to craft the same kind of weapon again, I think makes it like when it breaks, it's like less traumatizing to me and a lot of people that loved having like really powerful weapons.
Yeah, I think a big thing that comes with that is the fact that all the weapons in the world are now decayed and are much less powerful than they used to be. For example, a Royal Claymore back in Breath of the Wild, I think was like 52 base power, and now I think it's like 15 base power. That's a Royal Claymore. If you want to get like other weapons, they're going to be like, 15 power and below, which is not a lot early game. But once you start fusing things to your weapons, that makes them more powerful. And, it really does help with not just the durability factor, but like wanting to hold on to your better items factor. Now, I still have this to a degree because for me, one of the things that I love doing in Tears of the Kingdom Breath of the Wild is when I take photos of weapons, I love to do it in a specific spot, right? Like, let's say, for example, I'm about to enter in a dungeon. I'll take a commemorative photo with a weapon and be like, yeah, that's a really good spot to have a weapon, because I love filling out the Hyrule Compendium, which is like a completely optional thing. But I like filling it out with good photos too. So I do still have that sort of feeling to, keep a weapon stashed away for a good time. But once I've already taken a photo of a weapon, I don't feel like it's ever bad to break it, right? Like whenever I come across a Royal Claymore now, I'm just like, okay, let me attach a strong thing to it, and then I can just go crazy with it. It doesn't matter if it breaks or not, because there's gonna be another weapon around the corner, and I can just fuse, a Lizzle horn to it, and it will become good.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how they rebalance the stats of a lot of the weapons in Breath of the Wild. I think one of the most interesting weapons they rebalanced was the Bokoblin arms and the Moblin arms. Because if you remember in Breath of the Wild, those were pretty weak weapons, but now they're actually pretty strong, if a bit fragile.
Yeah, I noticed that. They're like, I think, for example, another comparison I would make to it is like their glass cannons, kind of like in Fire Emblem. There are these weapons in Fire Awakening called glass weapons, where if you have a glass sword, it'll do basically the amount of damage as a really, really high tier sword, but you can only use it 3 times. And that's kind of what the bone weapons, like the Bokoblin arm, Lizzle arm, and Moblin arm looked like. When I first saw the Moblin arm, I was like, whoa, 30-something power base? That's crazy.
Stronger than a Royal Claymore.
Right? Like, over double.
I think, I'm still experimenting a bit more with the crafting. I think a lot of other people have done a lot of more interesting things with it than I have. Maybe I'm just not as creative as them. Also, I haven't played the game as much as some other people have. I was just busy with school. I was so depressed when it first released. I couldn't play it because of school. I was just like, dang.
Aww. Yeah, I was lucky enough to play it the second Midnight dropped.
Yeah, you're so privileged. Get that streamer privilege. You get to play games right away if you're at work. It's okay.
You're not entirely wrong. I'm very happy to be able to do something like that, but oh my gosh, yeah. No, I get it though.
I think that's most of my thoughts so far on Tears of the Kingdom. I haven't had much more thoughts. I guess, without spoiling too much, what did you think of the story so far? I haven't gotten too far into it.
I'll say, I think people know that temples do exist. I think Nintendo advertised that. I won't say which ones that I did. You can go watch my Let's Play if you're interested. But I have done 2 temples so far, and there are memories in the game as well. And I've done, I think, 5 memories. And so far, from what I've seen, I really like. It's definitely darker than Breath of the Wild, for sure. I remember they advertised Tears of the Kingdom. It's like, oh, it's going to be a bit of a darker story. And so far, it definitely is. Especially, dude, the beginning of the game was so good. The first, 20 minutes or so that introduces you to the game, oh, it is so good. Oh, it is so good.
I love that. I love the beginning of the game and the story. Maybe I'm just, I've just been exploring too much. The story's been kind of confusing to me so far. I'm just like, what the heck is going on?
That's fair. Yeah, no, when you first start off, it's definitely there's a lot of questions that you have. One of the biggest questions that people had is, how long is Breath of the Wild to Tears of the Kingdom? How long, how many years took place in between the two? And it seems like the most common answer I'm hearing is 3 to 5 years. There's a 3 to 5 year time skip between Breath of the Wild, the end of Breath of the Wild, into the start of Tears of the Kingdom. But it's not official. It
is definitely not official. I mean, there are certain things that make you question, how long it was, because some places have changed a lot, and some places, not so much, and there's quite a bit. There's some changes that maybe could have happened really quickly, or maybe it took a long time to happen. It's a bit ambiguous, right. And I think that is one of the strengths of the story, is it kind of lets you experience the changes without feeding them to you. This is exactly what happened. This is the exact timeline and whatnot.
For sure. I think my one complaint about the game is there is some, I guess, consistency issues. What the heck happened to the Sheikah? Where are the divine beasts?
I think they had to get rid of them. I will say, like,
they're literally
I was
non-existent.
They're non-existent. I was able to suspend my disbelief long enough. I'm able to suspend my disbelief. The shrines are gone. I mean, there's still like the slate. The slate still exists, even though like it has none of the runes from the original game. They never really explained that.
It's not even the Sheikah slate. It's the Pura pad. It's a completely separate thing.
I also, my theory, maybe I just rationalized it away. I tend to like rationalize away these things.
I do the same thing, yeah.
I just went like, oh, maybe they upgraded it and they had to like, the software had to do an update and it wiped all the apps. I don't know.
I think what's so weird for me is like I was like, what happened to the Sheikah towers? Like, did they take them down? Did they just disappear after the my guess is that the Sheikah programmed all like the guardians, all the towers, and all the divine beasts to just like descend into the earth or like go somewhere. I don't know. They programmed them to do something. Is like once Link defeated Calamity Ganon, there's no need for these things anymore, so they're gone. Right? That's my only thought. Like I don't know. There are some callbacks to the divine beasts. Like people still like mention the fact that they existed. They still touch on the fact that the Calamity existed, but it's just like you don't see hardly anything. I believe there's only one guardian in the game, and it's not even active. It's a statue, and I'm pretty sure it's on Hateno Lab. I think that's the only guardian in the game. It's the only remnant of the fact that guardians even existed.
Maybe they just all stopped working because I thought like at the beginning of Breath of the Wild, maybe I'm just rationalizing again, but they were all like just kind of like sitting around until like Ganon reanimated all of them. So maybe after Ganon got defeated, they all just kind of fell down and no one really knew how to like use them, and so they were just kind of useless and scrap. I don't know.
Not necessarily. They did get them to start working. I remember they were researching them in memories, but then when the Calamity happened, Ganon's malice flew into the Guardians and took control of it, which I like that Calamity Ganon. I don't even know how like Calamity Ganon works, but I like how like Calamity Ganon's whole thing was like malice, and now we have gloom. That's like the new word of like the darkness is the gloom. It's just a little interesting how they separate it, and basically they look exactly the same, but malice looked a little, I want to say like pinkish reddish,
malice
whereas
is like diet gloom. Gloom is like way worse than malice.
Yeah, Gloom is like dark red, like it looks super evil, and it just kind of feels like an upgrade. And you can even see like dark fog around some certain places too.
Yeah, I will say that they didn't really adequately explain what the heck happened to the Divine Beast. I think one of my theories was that like after I remember like in Wind Waker when after you defeated the bosses, a lot of the old sages' spirits kind of like were able to rest in peace. So maybe that happened, and the Divine Beast had no operators, and they just stopped working. Who knows?
Right. That's probably what it is, and like I'm guessing, they're somewhere out there. Whether they descended into the earth, which wouldn't make sense because you have the depths, and they can't raise up because the skies. They went somewhere. We just don't know. I was kind of hoping like maybe with DLC, because there's surely gonna be DLC. I was hoping in the DLC they might touch on it or something.
No, Robbie's keeping them all in his basement. He's hoarding all of them for himself.
Yeah, these are my pets. You can't have them.
These are my Legos. You can't have them.
I think we'll move on, but one last thing I want to talk about is the fact that Pura has found like the secret to immortality and is sharing it with nobody. She's literally immortal, and like Robbie is still like this old guy. It's like, bro, that's your research assistant, or not research, but like that's your research buddy. Like you guys were partners. Give him the immortality. It's like
Purr's just like, no, I'm not gonna give it to Robbie. I'm gonna outlive him, and then I'll be the greatest researcher. See, Purr's the real villain in Tears of the Kingdom for not sharing.
It's like, literally, it's like Ganon. Ganon exists, but it's just like, shouldn't you be after Purra and her freaking immortality potion or whatever? Like, come on now.
I do think it's supposed to be more of a gag, but
yeah, but it's still just like this character just found out the secret to immortality and nobody cares? Really? Oh, whatever. Anyways, I guess I kind of wanted to move over to the topic of, I guess, either talking about anime or talking about more game-related things.
I don't know.
I guess we
Anime
kinda
seems more like a
transition.
race car 627 thing.
Well, I know you've been watching like some animes.
I've probably watched more anime than I used to. I used to actually be like, no, I don't watch anime. I'm not a weeb. What are you talking about? Not that I shame people for watching anime. It didn't really feel like something. I used to watch a lot more American cartoons, and I feel like recently I've watched a lot more anime. But yeah.
No, I think I'm honestly kind of the same way. When I was in my teens, I got recommended like a lot of anime because a lot of my I didn't have many friends, but a good amount of my friends did like anime. And one of the biggest ones that I really got attached to early on was Hunter x Hunter or Hunter x Hunter. Love that anime, but like in more recent years, I've become more like open to the idea. I guess when I was in teen years, you know how it was like cool to hate on anime. That was kind of like the thing, and so I kind of just went along with the group. I was like, well, I like cartoons better. You know, I'm not really gonna like go into anime too much. Like I liked Hunter x Hunter. I started getting into One Piece, but like I didn't really dive into too many others. But like nowadays, if somebody recommends me an anime and I got the time, I'll be like, okay, I can check it out.
I remember watching
anime,
a few with you.
Yeah, I guess Monoka Magica was the one that you recommended to me, which we watched together, and that one was really good, really really good. And it's still ongoing. There's still like another movie coming out. I'm pretty
Supposedly.
sure.
We'll see. It's like forever to be continued.
Yeah, I'd like to see where the story goes from there because I remember I think I watched like the first like 3 episodes with you, and I was just like, why is I felt so confused, I guess, watching the show, and you were just like, just keep watching, just keep waiting for it. I don't really want to go into spoilers of the show because it's definitely something that you should watch for yourself.
Yeah, you should watch for yourself.
Monoka
I'm not
Magica,
going
that
to go into it. I will say there is a content warning I will give. It is a mature show, so if you're not into that kind of stuff, don't watch it, obviously.
It's definitely looks can be deceiving because it looked like something that was like, I don't know, for me, something that like, you know, young teenage girls would be into, like
yeah,
magical
it seemed more
girls.
like a shoujo anime, like, you know,
Yeah,
like
it
a
seemed
cutesy...
like, you know, like Sailor Moon. I've never seen Sailor Moon, but it felt like it would sort of reach that same target demographic. And I was a little skeptical, you know, going into it. And then like after I watched like a few more episodes, I was like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
You know, interestingly, even though Racecar is supposed to be the anime expert in our friend group, I think when I was talking to him recently, he said he actually has been watching less anime.
He's told me that in more recent years, but I think he's definitely more of like he watched a lot in his teen years, I believe, and he's more knowledgeable about the classics. And in the next episode of the podcast, I'll be inviting Racecar on, and we'll definitely be talking with him about anime maybe a little bit. But I was just curious, you know, have you seen any good ones recently?
I mean, I've seen Bocchi the Rock, but that's been a good one. I've heard a lot of people talk about Oshinoko, but I haven't
I've heard
watched
about that
one
a lot. I think it's made by the same creator as Kaguya-sama, which I really liked that anime. So I think I might give it a try. The character designs look a little, I guess, too anime. I don't know. It's like I think it's like an idol anime or something. I haven't seen too much of it.
It is an idol anime. And interestingly, the OP is made by Yasobi, which is one of my favorite artists. I mean, I feel like that's kind of the point with that anime. I haven't seen too much of it, but I feel like it's kind of supposed to be like ultra anime, like it's because it's supposed to be like an idol anime. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I do know of an idol anime only because of the channel Siva Gunner, which is like a video game parody, like musical parody channel. It's so funny. There's like lore with it, and there's this character Nozomi that they take from I think it's called Love Live, and like when I saw that, I was like, what the heck is this anime? I never watched it, but I'd always pretend that I would have seen it. I was like, oh yeah, that's so good, but I never watched it because I just did it because the Siva Gunner meme. But you know, I think like Oshinoko seems like it has like a darker side. I haven't seen it, of course. I've just been told it has like a more mature theme. So I was like, okay, maybe I could give it a try. And it's also made by the same creator of Kaguya-sama, which I did like that anime. So
I did not watch Kaguya-sama, so I'm not sure what I'm missing. I will say
I do enjoy that one.
I think the theme of I think like the summary of what it's about, it's like a more like wouldn't say realistic. I guess it's more like a sobering take on like what it's really like to be an idol and whatnot, and the life of an idol and whatnot. Because we idolize them, but like I guess it's more of like an exploration of their like personal lives, and I think that can be interesting.
Yeah, that definitely could be interesting. And like since it's by the same author, of course, I know it's going to be probably pretty interesting. I think for me though, I haven't really seen too many new animes. I guess you could say Dr. Stone is like an ongoing one I've been watching. I really like Dr. Stone. But one I picked up recently, which it's another anime I was like a little skeptical on because it was a sports-based anime, but even in the first episode, you know that it's like definitely going somewhere else. It's an anime called Blue Lock. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I haven't really been watching a whole lot of shows recently. I mostly got subsumed by grad school, which is a common theme among grad students.
right, of course. I haven't seen too many episodes of the show myself. I think I'm on episode like 8 right now, but it's really weird because it's like a show about like a soccer player, and I'm not like a super big like soccer fan, or I guess football for some people, but it's like, oh, how do I explain it without like going super spoiling? Like the premise is your team doesn't matter, I guess. It's so weird. It's like you matter more than your team. I'm explaining this terribly. It was very interesting. No, trust me. You know how like a lot of animes are all about like power of friendship and whatnot?
Yeah.
This is not.
I mean, that is
the
that
opposite.
is like the shonen anime trope. It is the power of friendship.
And I think Blue Lock is a shonen show. I could be wrong. I'm not too knowledgeable about like what classifies as shonen.
Shonen is just any anime that's for like young boys, pretty much. That's what it actually.
Right. Yeah. That probably would be. This probably would be targeted at that audience. But basically, the premise is like this kid named Isagi is like not that good at soccer, and he wanted to get to like the nationals, and his team didn't make it. And he's like, oh man, my team kind of held me back. And then he was invited to this place called Blue Lock, where this character comes up and is like, oh yeah, by the way guys, teams don't matter, it's all about you. We're gonna try and make the best striker, which I guess is like a soccer position that like is cool and
like
scores
personal
goals.
Development underdog kind of feel to it.
A little bit, but there's like a psychology, I guess you could say, behind it. I don't know, I really like psychology thing, but like this is very interesting because it's like, yeah, this is how we're gonna do things. There are like 300 people here, right? You can join in this thing called Blue Lock, and you have to become the best striker. We are going to eliminate 299 people. They're all going to go home. And once you're eliminated, you can never play for Japan's soccer team officially ever again. But that's the risk, right? It's supposed to be like building up your ego. That's the whole thing, is like it talks a lot about ego, is like to build your own confidence and ego that you will be like the greatest player. Because like apparently the show says that like Japan's soccer team is garbage, so they're saying like, oh yeah, we'll go through this program called Blue Lock to create the like greatest soccer player of all time by competing with like really, really high stakes. It's like if you enter this competition, there is a 1 in 300 chance of you winning. You have to like beat everybody else,
or just give up soccer professionally forever.
Or give up soccer professionally forever, yeah. And like if you lose, that's it. So you have to constantly like adapt. And that's what's really cool, is like the main character, he's like pretty, he's average, I guess you could say, but like as the show goes on, he like develops his abilities and like becomes very analytical and starts to adapt. I see.
So it's not like one of those like secret OP animes. I think
No. He starts off as like pretty bad, but like through the people around him who have like already developed skills, he watches them and learns from them, and it's actually really cool how the anime portrays it. And what I think is really cool is that even though it's like a competition, there are segments where players have to work together, and it's like they're competing with themselves on the same team. It's like they all want to score the goal, because if you score the goal, you get the most attention. You are proving to everybody else that you're the best. So it's like there's competition. It's like you have a team of soccer players, but they're all working against each other, even though they're on the same team. It's really
so it's kind of like a big free for all. That's interesting.
It's a free for all, but you have to work together in certain segments. It's pretty interesting, honestly.
That does seem interesting. I might give it a watch sometime now that you've drawn my attention to it. I do apologize for not having a whole lot to comment on in this area. The last anime I watched was 6 months ago, and it was Bocchi the Rock. So I can't really say I have seen a whole lot of recent stuff.
Nah, that's okay. I just figured like we could just touch on that briefly. I guess we could move on to a little bit of game design.
Game design?
You're down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm down. I think we touched a bit about game design in Breath of the Wild in the interest there. We can talk a bit more about it generally.
Yeah, well, I wanted to talk more about our game that never really happened.
Oh, our game? I was actually thinking about it earlier today. Like
we think about this all the time. It's okay. So for those who don't know, I guess most people don't. When we were in high school, we had the same programming class, and for one of our projects, we wanted to make a video game, and we kind of we're working on it for a long time. And we never really got super far into anything, but we learned a lot of fundamentals from game design. I was working more on the art side of things and looking into the Unity engine while just dabbling into programming, while you were very heavy on the programming side of things, looking into physics engines and the fundamentals of what the game wanted to be. And we had a third member as well who was working on the UI. That was it. I'm pretty sure he didn't really do much.
Yeah,
he was basically tasked to work on the UI and then never did.
Well, he kind of got it to work. I mean,
really.
it's he got it to work, but not it wasn't integrated with anything else. So.
No, it was its own thing. He made a UI, but it wasn't even attached to the game at all. It didn't even make it into the final product.
No, it didn't, unfortunately. I mean, it is just how kind of some high school projects work. Some people are going to be doing a bit more of the work than others. I'm not too salty about it. He is still one of our friends. Just FYI.
Of course, yeah.
Well, I think he's closer to you than me. I haven't seen him in a while, but I don't have any hard feelings about that. But in terms of... I like to think about it a lot because there's a lot of lessons learned about the game design that I think about now that I have programmed for a lot longer. I think one of those was just that I think I was just trying too hard to make the physics engine hyper realistic, whereas that's kind of not the point, and I could have I really could have finished it with something simple and moved on, and that's something more of I think that's something you realize as you get older and wiser with your programming, is sometimes you just do something that isn't the best version of that thing, so you can work on other things. And yeah.
Right. I think one of the things that we were just really against using was Unity, which is a create your own sort of game. It's like a game engine. We did not want to use the built-in physics engine because it just didn't work that well. So you were designing this physics engine for, I want to say, 6 months, right? Is that right?
Well, it wasn't exactly like that, and I wouldn't characterize, now that I'm more experienced, I wouldn't say Unity's physics engine isn't bad. It just didn't do what we wanted it to do. We wanted a different kind of physics than what Unity physics
right
did. It's kind of, the way I would describe it is the Unity physics engine is kind of like a pre-made meal. It gives you some things, but you don't want.
It's a kid's cuisine for sure.
It is like a kid's cuisine, but sometimes you don't want a kid's cuisine, or sometimes you don't want a Lunchable. Sometimes you want a sandwich, Yeah,
and so... I think I would describe it as it's also somewhat buggy. For example, I'll probably show up a clip right now from a game I made called Gurgenders back in 2018. I used Unity's built-in physics engine, and as you can see, it probably works pretty well, but it's fairly buggy. And it's not ideal for sure. I would have much rather had a genuine physics engine built up from the ground up or whatever. And what you made when you had that final product, it worked well, and it worked I guess it just worked really, really well. And I think what was so sad about it was our teacher, Dr. D, Dr. freaking Draken from Kim Possible. But this teacher was not the greatest teacher of all time. They weren't even a teacher, I should say.
She had an English PhD in a programming class.
And that was it. And literally, I was like the artist of the group, right? I think I did, maybe 200, 300 lines of code that helped like integrate the art into the game, right? And I think you had, I don't know how many lines of code, a lot more than I did. You worked very hard on the code.
It's actually still on my GitHub.
Really?
Yes,
That's funny. That's impressive. While you do that, our teacher, because she didn't really understand coding, despite the fact that she was a programming teacher, it was so funny because she looked at my work and the fact that like I had like a thing moving on screen, right? I had like characters that could move on screen up, down, left, and right. They had animation loops that would trigger, like it had like walk cycles that move left, right, up, down, jump, and whatnot, squat. And she was like, oh, that's cute. The character's moving. Wow, that's so neat. And I could like, go from a level to another level. And it was pretty cool. And then she looked at your code and she didn't like understand what the physics meant because she was reading through it and obviously she had no idea what she was looking at. She thought she was basically looking at nothing. And despite the fact that you worked so hard on this physics engine for such a long amount of time, and then she just is complaining about your work, despite the fact that whenever I was like moving my character, that was because of you. Like when I was able to jump because you programmed the physics engine to jump. And yet I got all the credit for that. I felt so bad because I knew how hard you worked, and yet she complained so much about your segment because she just didn't understand.
It is like that sometimes.
It's still something I felt so bad about.
I will say I did not manage my time well on that project. I think I made my initial... So I didn't make it from scratch. I followed a tutorial by a guy named, I think his name is Sebastian Lee. He still makes videos, actually. He doesn't make game videos anymore. He makes like just general programming videos, and he's actually still a pretty big YouTuber. And I actually saw some of his more recent videos. I think one time he tried to remake Minecraft from scratch, which was kind of interesting.
Wow.
Or he was like, how close can I come to making a game like Minecraft without looking at any of its code, just by thinking about it for a bit. Or maybe that was someone else, but he still makes videos like that. And I followed his tutorial on how to make the physics engine, and I was just learning a lot about physics online. Honestly, if I had a bit of guidance and I had someone just tell me, no, you don't need to do this, it probably would have saved me a lot of time.
For sure.
Because I think I had something that was working, but I wasn't satisfied with it because it wasn't as realistic. I could make it even more realistic and even more precise and nice if I just changed it a little. But
you were aiming for something that was sublime, where all we needed was something that was good enough.
Well, I wouldn't even say that what I had was sublime. It
felt like that's what you were aiming for, honestly.
I was trying to aim
from my
for it, but yeah, you're correct. It was from a perspective of someone who also didn't fully know what they were doing, and so I was trying to I kind of bit off more than I can chew, and I didn't fully understand what I was doing at the time. So
no, I think another big reason was because our teacher was putting a lot of pressure on you to see results, and I think that pressure you put a lot of that onto yourself, and was like, okay, I know that I can do this. Let me prove her wrong, sort of thing. But she was just, even when it was finished, it was just she didn't get it. And I think what's really upsetting about that is the teacher. She was only there. We only had her for 2 years. At least I only had her for 2 years. Did you have her for 2 years or just one?
I only had her for one I only had her for that one special the class that we had her in was a special topics class where we would just do projects, student-led projects that we would suggest to her. I had a different programming teacher for my first year who was actually really good at teaching. So
yeah, and it was if we had that person, I couldn't. Just think about what we could have done,
I mean, it's not that I think he was that. I don't think he knew. I don't think his main experience was in physics engines, but I think he would have been able to steer us better. Yeah, he would have been able to give us 100%. More worldly advice, I think.
Because what our teacher did, she gave us negative advice. At least we would have had something to work with, right?
Do you want to talk a bit more about what the game was about to our viewers?
Sure, yeah, I think we can. So basically, you were better with the main character. You could describe her. I worked a lot more on side characters. So I guess basically what the premise of the game was was there was this girl named Gum. She was 13 years, or was she 12 or 13?
I think I made her 13.
13, and she was moving to an adjacent city of Chicago. I don't think it was specifically Chicago, but it was basically Chicago.
It's supposed to be an alternate universe Chicago, actually.
Yeah, like an alternate universe Chicago. That way we can have silly things going on. And she arrives there, and she doesn't really have that many friends. But the whole point is that in this city, it is being run by 5 secret societies that are all like really, really stupid.
Well,
and the biggest one was, I believe, was it the Box? What was it called? The Box Society?
It was Boxco.
Boxco, that's right, yeah. And it was led by the Box Wizard, who was like in charge of the city, basically. And there were all these other societies that were all in a control for power. And they were all going to be really, really stupid. Honestly, I don't remember all of them. There was the Society, I believe, of Red Balloons.
There was the Red Balloon Society, the Illuminati, the Politeness Society. I'm trying to remember the last one.
I remember loving the Red Balloons one. I loved making the freaking designs of the Red Balloons. Dude, because all the characters would just, like, all the people of these societies would be obsessed with whatever they were in. There was the League of Mathematicians, right?
The League of Mathematicians.
The Mathematicians, that's right, yeah. So the Mathematicians were a bunch of, like, stupid nerds that were, like, super obsessed with math, and they would attack you using... the whole game, like, the combat would become, like, super unorthodox. Like, you wouldn't fight with your fists, you wouldn't fight with swords, you would fight with, like, stupid everyday objects, like fishing rods and books and calculators, and they would all just be, like, really, really dumb and put together. It was very, I guess you could say... You know, I don't want to say it was Earthbound inspired, because like how many indie games out there are Earthbound inspired, but like there definitely was something there inspired by Earthbound, but like there was a lot of other things that we took inspiration from too.
A lot of the reason for those wacky mechanics was the school would continuously censor us if we tried to make anything like too violent, so we just like made something so over the top and ridiculous.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that was also partially because that was my humor being influenced on the game, because my humor was very out there. It was just like, let's combine all this random stuff together and then just shove it in one place and just have the characters be as wacky and silly as possible. And that was what I wanted. That's why I was like mainly working on the side characters, while you were more focused on the main character. I guess you could give a brief description of what our main character, what her personality was.
Well, I think like it's evolved a bit over the years, but what I originally wanted Gum to be was like, she's like this like I wanted to not have like a silent protagonist like a lot of other games, so I really wanted our main character to have like a bit of a personality. So I was just like, well, what if we had like, in a lot of games they have like this narration done by like other characters. I'm like, what if by like the game, or like you look at this object when you like examine it and it like kind of describes it to you. And I thought it would be kind of fun if like our main character was actually the person that was describing it, because like she just likes commenting on things in a sarcastic way. And
she was very like sarcastic and cynical, I believe.
It wasn't like, yeah, it was a bit cynical. She's like, she kind of like, she kind of gives like comedic takes on everything. It was like kind of because of like, I think in story-wise, it was because she was like coping with moving to a new area, and she was just trying to like find the humor in everything, even though she felt like everything was a little ridiculous.
Right. And I guess I could talk about Marius. Who was one of these side characters.
Oh yeah, Marius.
So Marius is one of the first characters that Gum was supposed to encounter. She was supposed to walk around her neighborhood and just kind of get to know everybody. And she would fall into Marius's underground lab. So Marius was this scientist. He was like a mad scientist, but except he had like extreme social anxiety, like never goes outside kind of thing. And she would stumble upon one of his robots and make friends with one of his robots. And one of the levels would basically be to try to escape Marius's lab with the help of the robot. And then when you would meet up with Marius, he would be like freaking out, like, oh my gosh, there's a human in here, what the heck, who is this? He can't handle social interactions, so he immediately gets in a giant mech and tries to fight you, a small little child. And eventually, with the help of the robot, with the help of the robot, you're able to take down his freaking mech. And eventually you befriend him.
I don't think you actually take down the mech, you just take down Marius by slapping his glasses off.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah, that's right. Dude, okay, so you know how like Doofenshmirtz is like always building self-destruct buttons and how he always fails like the stupidest things? That's basically what Marius would be. He would all of his inventions would fail in like really, really stupid ways. And there was obviously like a lot more backstory to the character, but he was very
I thought
like,
he was like supposed to be like one of the smartest people in the world because he gets like every like award ever, but like he never accepts them because of social anxiety.
Right, and he also has a rival who always comes in second place to him, but is like super good like socially as well. He's just always right behind Marius when it comes to like, you know, his inventions and whatnot. And like the two of them were supposed to have like this master as well, and it was a whole plot line. But basically how it would go is like Marius would give you tasks regarding like the society members, like how there were the 5 societies. Marius is kind of wanting to like get rid of the societies, or I forget exactly. We didn't really work on that part of the plot too much, but there's a reason why we had to take down the societies. And I believe Marius invented like a little phone for you called Daisy, based off of, I believe, the Great Gatsby's character Daisy. For some reason,
at the time, we just decided for some reason.
At the time.
We just decided to meme it.
We decided to meme it, and we created the phone. It was supposed to be like a Daisy phone or whatever. And
I still remember the acronym that you gave. Daisy's actually an acronym.
Oh, that's right. I forget what it was though.
I think it was like the dazzling AI that is saving you.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Now that I think about it. Yeah, I remember we've had AI in there. That's right. Because it was like an AI phone and you could talk to it for like hints and whatnot throughout the game. And I remember we were also going to put in a secret boss, Tom the Heartless.
Actually, his name is Autumn the Turtless.
Oh yeah, Autumn the Turtless. It was just Tom the Heartless, but like spelled incorrectly. And it's literally in the Great Gatsby. I know we're really stupid, right? So you know this is not going to make sense to anybody.
This is just a dumb high school game. I don't think in like the actual game, if we ever made the actual game, it would actually be in the actual game.
Yeah, but it was. There's like this couple in The Great Gatsby. It's Daisy and Tom, and there was like this secret boss they were gonna make called like Autumn the Turtless or Tom the Heartless rearranged, and it was literally just like a secret boss below. I think it was like supposed to be like at the bottom floor of Boxco, and like when you went in there,
it was supposed to be at the bottom floor of Dev Tower. So there's this.
Dev Tower. That's right.
So there's this tower in the game. I think it was like more of a post-game thing. I think we were planning on it, but this was way too ambitious.
Yeah, of course.
You were supposed to be able to like, you know how in Pokemon you could like meet the devs? Like it was the same thing where you could like meet the devs in Dev Tower as more of like a post-game thing. And it was like in the basement, which is like a secret hidden area, you could battle this secret boss, Autumn the Turtless.
Autumn the Turtless. And he would just be like the hardest boss in the game.
I thought the hardest boss was supposed to be the devs. He would be the second hardest, but I think
I thought Autumn the Turtless was supposed to be the hardest.
Okay.
All the dev everything in Dev Tower probably would have been the hardest. But there were so many other things that we could touch upon. We had like this we had this mechanic called like band abilities as well, which would be like a specific character has like their own abilities that they could do. Like I think Gums was dancing, and she would be able to avoid. She was able to like avoid enemy attacks by using part of her dances. It was to give each character that you would play as a little bit more, I don't know, a difference to them. I know
we made a collectible called Dirt.
That's true. I could actually show up some of the dirts as well, because we have this. We wanted to make like a really stupid collectible, and there were going to be 1,000 of them, but you can get them from anywhere, right? You could literally go into the park and press A and be like, "You got a dirt," and then you press A. I could press A constantly and keep getting dirt because you keep picking up dirt. But every single dirt would have like a little different description on it, and I'll show you some up on the screen right now. But literally, it was just like the stupidest thing because we were just nerds and we wanted to like put a bunch of references in the game, and we'd be like, "Oh, this dirt references this. This dirt references this." It's just, it was so stupid, but we loved it.
I think that was made later. That was made later after the after high school when we were still working on it, like in our free time. The days when I still had free time.
Yeah, and do you want to talk on Gum's schoolmates?
I wouldn't really even say they were schoolmates. She kind of just met them outside of school, didn't she?
I thought they were in school, but like they just became friends.
Yeah, they became friends.
And then they became like the main 3 of the game.
Yeah, there's like Ellie, and then there's Pudding.
Pudding, I love Pudding, dude.
Honestly, I love Pudding. Pudding's grown on me. I love both of them. Ellie's supposed to be like the more athletic of the two, and then there's Pudding, who like I think he's like supposed to be more of like the introverted it out of the two. I think, didn't you invent them though?
Yeah, I had Pudding, and basically he was definitely somebody who like wanted to fill in big shoes, but his all his family members were rock stars, and they were part of one of the societies. Actually, I think his mom was the leader of one of the societies.
Yeah, his mom is Morgan Birmingham.
Morgan Birmingham, that's right. I forgot that name. And she was like this crazy rock star who was just like a leader of one of the societies. And yeah, Pudding always felt like very, I guess you could say like, oh man, my parents are the ones in the spotlight. I don't have any special talent. I don't have any musical talents, because he like couldn't sing or whatever. And so his parents were always like, oh, you can't sing, then you can't join us and the rest of the family up on stage. Go do whatever. And so he always felt like he was, worth less. So he turned to like video games and whatnot. So he was more introverted. And I think Eliana, or Ellie for short, she was just mainly the athletic one who was like, I don't know.
She plays baseball.
Like pretty simple,
played baseball.
Right?
Yeah, she's a pretty sociable person who plays baseball. She has like other friends outside of them, but I feel like, but she knew a lot of other people, I think, probably before the game started, but I think she got a lot closer to Gum and Pudding like as the game progressed, because I think that's who she would be primarily spending time with at that point.
Right, and I think part of it was like she would offer like, I don't know how to explain it. Here's an example. Let's say Gum and Pudding are like, they're gonna go to Marius's basement, and they're like, wait, you're gonna go to like this old guy's basement? Isn't that kind of weird? And it's just like, oh yeah, it's fine. He's just, yeah, it's just like, oh yeah, no, it's not weird at all.
We're
We're
like
just
the social catalyst of the group.
Yeah, it's like she's supposed to just be like the most grounded one, I guess you could say. And it's just like, you're gonna go into this creepy guy's house
I
full
would say
of
that's
like
grounded. I feel like
whatnot.
she's just outgoing.
Well, I mean, like grounded in the world, I guess you could say. Like, where she's like the most. Yeah, she's like the most reasonable. Whereas like Gum and Pudding are just kind of like, I don't want to say troublemakers, but they would definitely be the ones to get into trouble.
I feel like.
Yeah, more something like that, where they would see like a, Marius's house that's like all full of like mechs and whatnot, and they're just like, oh, that's cool. Whereas Ellie would be more like, what the heck? We cannot go in there. That guy's gonna kill us. I loved working on these characters for sure.
Wasn't Ellie's mom supposed to be like managing like the store?
I think so. I think there was like a cafe or something that she was supposed to be like the owner of or something.
No, it was like a convenience store. I think her mom Georgia was managing the store, except like it's supposed to be called Greg's, and Greg is gone. Greg's not there.
Oh wait, was that? Oh, that's right. I forgot. Yeah, there was a store called Greg's that was based off of my friend Greg, that was also the character from Gurgenders. Not really, but it was just because I like the name Greg, because it's honestly one of the funniest names of all time. And Greg was supposed to be this storekeeper, and basically going to Greg's shop, you could get like items for the game, but it would also lead you on lots of different little side quests that would like advance different plots, and eventually like the final side quest in the line of like Greg side quest was to find Greg and bring him back or whatever.
Because Greg's been missing for years.
Yeah. I know one of the other characters, a very silly character that we made, was Circle Guy.
Circle Guy!
And Circle Guy was basically the 6th society. There were 5 societies in the game. And Circle Guy was... I wouldn't really even call
him a society. He just kind of acts alone.
No, he was literally like garbage. He was one person. He was obsessed with circles, and he was the only member in his society.
He was the self-proclaimed rival of the Box Wizard, even though the Box Wizard doesn't even know who he is.
The Box Wizard, who was like the leader again of this city, the biggest society, Boxco, and he was like, Circle Guy was the self-proclaimed like biggest rival of Boxco, and literally, the Box Wizard had no idea who Circle Guy was. But what we wanted to do was like throughout the game, like maybe like 4 or 5 times, you fight Circle Guy and he's a joke, right? Like you one-shot him every time.
Well, because he's just like, he's getting stronger, but he's always under-leveled compared to you.
Yeah, he'd get stronger each time, but like minusculely, so you'd always like just destroy him. But then like the final fight, he would like get like some random power and become like super difficult for his final fight.
But you would still defeat him.
Yeah, no, you'd still defeat him.
I think at the end, wasn't everyone supposed to like work together to defeat the Box Wizard?
Yeah, all the societies were supposed to come together, and then we also had to we had the plot line of where Marius and his rival they would go and M board. That's right. Marius and M board.
It's supposed to be M_B0ARD, by the way. That's the canonical.
It's supposed to be like motherboard, but whatever. And the two of them were supposed to, combine their talents together after like basically being rivals for the whole game. And they were supposed to go find their old master to teach them like the way to open the way to the fourth dimension or something to like challenge the box wizard. It was a whole. We had so many ideas going into this game. It was crazy, and like we still have wishes that this game could be made because it would definitely be really, really wacky. That's for sure.
We'll set up a Kickstarter for it eventually.
But yeah, I think unless there's anything else you want to talk about, there's definitely a lot more that we could. But we got.
I mean, the game goes on forever. There's a lot of things you could talk about the game. We only really scratched the surface.
Yeah.
But I mean, I feel like I don't really have a whole lot more today. But if you have any other topics, I'd be open to talking about them.
I think that was probably about it. Obviously, I'd love to have you come back on a future episode, and we could talk some more. Maybe we could even have like both you and a little rookie or some other guests on at the same time. We could all have like a group conversation. Or something.
We could bully the little rookie together.
For sure. But yeah, I think that's a good place to leave it. Definitely a fun conversation. Always fun talking with you, for sure. And one day we hope Gumrug can be a thing, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see, of course. But yeah, thank you so much to Emmy for joining me. It was a very, very fun time. Do you have any final thoughts you'd like to say?
I don't really think I have too many concluding remarks. It was really nice to get to come on. I'm thankful that you offered me this. And good luck with your podcasts. I know I'm not much of a YouTuber myself, so.
No worries there. It's just a new type of thing I'm trying out. But yeah, there we go, everybody. I hope you enjoyed. Definitely let me know your thoughts down below on the kind of stuff we talked about. I know this is a little different than what we talked about with the little rookie, but we'll kind of have different topics popping up here and there, and hopefully you can relate to some of them. And I don't know. And let me know when it came to the Tears of the Kingdom section. Let me know how you're enjoying the game, of course. And yeah, I think that'll be it. So thanks so much for listening in, everybody, and I'll catch you all next week for the next episode of Catching Zeez. Bye-bye.